Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about You, Season 3, Episode 5. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So obviously, after the whole Natalie debacle and everything getting resolved of Gil, life has turned back to normal, but we spent a lot more time in this normal life. And Love has adjusted pretty quickly. Obviously, she's becoming besties with Sherry, but like this life and everything, it isn't just about Henry. Like, she's acclimated to it pretty quickly, whereas Joe's a little resistant. Like, obviously they're talking in therapy about them being in a good place, but for Joe it's like, oh, life is so boring and kind of dull. Turns out he has friends, but it's only Dante and Marianne at work. Mainly Marianne. We don't really know if him and Dante are friends. I think they are, but but it's like, right, do you have any friendships outside of work? To be fair, like, when we look back in the past, Joe never had many relationships out of, like, the inner circles he was intermingling in. Like, yeah, like, all his relationships typically are work-related relationships. Like, he never really had any I think, like, Ellie might have in borderline counted as one, but most of his friendships are just typically, like, inner circle. Like, just because, like, of work and stuff like that. So obviously trying to find a way to, be friend. Like, obviously him and Marianne are hitting it off, but obviously he has to control his urges because now he's just thinking like, oh, she's drawing him, and just he finds himself kind of seduced and just like turning a little bit back into his old self. Even to the point he grabbed her bracelet. He was like, no, put it down, put it back. She's like, are you okay? He's like, yeah, I'm fine. He's trying to do everything he can to keep the animal inside him at bay. Because initially, like, earlier when they're hanging out with Carrie and Sherry, like, Carrie's offering, like, he's like, oh, we're going on this weekend thing, and Joe should come too, but he doesn't want to, but Love kind of pushes for it because it's like, right, you need friends and stuff like that. Because it also ties into, like, Joe and Love, when they're having sex, he's, having some issues, and you're like, oh, is it just, I guess because he's stressing out just like about the life and everything of like, yeah, it's become like second nature and easy for Love. She makes it seems effortless, but it's because for him it's like, yeah, like he likes some people, but he hates a lot of other people, so he doesn't want to really give them a chance. And I think it stems, especially men, I think having friendships with men has not always been the easiest thing either, because of his particular background of obviously like at school getting bullied and beaten up, people getting beaten up for just being close to him. So it's like his relationships have always been kind of tainted in some regard. It never, like, getting close to him never worked out, hasn't worked out over the course of this show. And as we see in the past, like everything with his mom, now like everything, like, him, like, when his mom dropped him off, and like obviously Fiona's like the main person looking after him, like he didn't really have anyone he can turn to. So obviously, like, he looks at, like, he has a certain perception of men, because he's like, yeah, like, what kind of friendships can I have with men? I could never have friendship with boys when I was a boy myself, just because of that. So I think that trauma of all that kind of still, like, it's an underlining issue for him. Obviously, there's a complicated thing of, like, Theo popping in and out. Obviously he comes back and forth, staying at his stepdad's, Matthew's place. But it turns out Theo's actually kind of in a bad place, essentially, because it turns out, as Sherry saw it, like, oh, gossiping about his circumstances and stuff like that. But that Love kind of defends him, like, no, he seems like he's a good kid who just needs some good influences in his life. So he's kind of flunking out of school. He decides to stop by, and like the little moments between him and Love. At first I thought, because like there was a part of, like, earlier in the episode, Love is thinking about the kiss with Theo because it's still ruminating in her mind. So she kisses Joe, and it's like, she's trying to hide that, like, that did mean something, even though she shut it down. And so earlier on, Joe, like, runs into her, like, them talking. He's like, why does it feel like I walked in the middle of something? And then Theo giving him that look. He's like, oh yeah, the lawn, it looks immaculate, and just kind of like, it seemed a little sarcastic, but I wasn't sure. Like, considering like he has a thing for your wife, it seemed like it was just him being kind of a coy douchebag about it. But then, like, he's like, yeah, like, he's like, I know I'm being paranoid, but I'm going to look into it to make sure you're not having some sketchy affair with the stepchild of the woman that you killed. And it turns out, he's like, yeah, I know I'm being paranoid. Love, what the fuck? Because all of a sudden there's some Uber rides to, like, Pablo Alto. And it's like, he confronts her about it. She's like, are you asking me or are you accusing me? He's like, what's this about? And she's like, because anytime he got drunk or something, she's like, I offer him that. And also, like, I'll get him a ride. And it's like, okay, is there anything else? And it's like, and he kissed me, but I shut it down immediately, and Joe gets pissed. He's like, what the fuck, love? Like, here I am trying to do everything that you want me to be and everything. But obviously for her, it's like, obviously you're not happy here, Joe, so maybe you should go on that trip. And he does. It's a whole trip about, like, kind of getting in touch with your inner beast, which Joe's not too keen on that, considering, like, his inner beast can be unpredictable and can be obsessive, and things can have a bloody as a bloody result. Like, things can have a terrible outlook because of that inner beast inside of him. But one of the guys that's bringing him there, it's just kind of like, yeah, like, Carrie, he's like, yeah, I weeped because of this circumstance. But Joe's not really believing it, because he's just like, he thinks this is all kind of horse shit. And even one of the guys there is like, yeah, I only come here because, like, his partner Andrew is all about it. So he's like, yeah, but even then, he's like, yeah, but when I first came here, he's like, I honestly wept like a baby, you know? So, like, he's like, honestly, he's like, Carrie says this is about being a man, but he's like, yeah, it's almost like being a kid again. It's kind of, and I think that's a necessary thing for Joe, at least when, like, that line was brought up, because, like, Joe didn't have much of a childhood. His childhood was mad messed up, so it's like, not necessarily rewinding the time, but kind of getting in touch with who he is on the inside. So, obviously, there's the rules of no shirts, no cell phones, you can only hunt what you kill, and then also, like, you got to make animalistic noises, and there are no rules. And so Joe gets, like, forced into it, and Carrie takes him go hunting, and I was like, oh, putting a knife in Joe's hand, this could get bad. And especially when, like, Carrie starts pushing Joe more and more, I'm like, oh boy, this is going to be bad. Like, I hope Joe doesn't pick up the knife just to slice his throat. But he's calling, because it turns out he knows about Joe's issues, because Love talked to Sherry about it. It's like, wait, she did? So, and just Carrie kept pushing him, and you think about the bullies and everything, and that just makes Joe push Carrie. He falls down, hits his head on like a rock and shit, and you're like, oh, this went bad. I was like, what's Joe gonna do? It's like, well, he can't cover it up to pretend like nothing happened, considering the fact is that he was last seen with Carrie. So it's like, I was like, how'd you get around this? But he brought him back, like, oh my god, I don't know if he's still breathing. Like, no, please still be alive, please be alive. And he's about to give him CPR mouth to mouth, and he's like, what are you doing? Are you trying to save me, Goldberg? And it's like, no, it's gonna take more than that to kill me. And he like pops his dislocated, like, arm and shoulder back into place. You're like, oh, that worked out, luckily. And I love it. And, like, Joe's like, oh my god, he's gonna, like, tell me, like, I don't belong. He's gonna tell everyone how much of a psycho I am, that I pushed him. Because that's, for him, he's like, looking at their pack mentality, as crazy as they are, it just made him feel more like a lone wolf. But in that moment, it's like, Goldberg, you're an animal, you know, and, like, kind of welcoming him amongst their ranks. And Joe kind of breaks down, because he's never really been embraced in that moment. It's like, in that moment, he's like, they saw the darkness in me and they accepted me. And that's always been Love and Joe's deepest insecurities and worries, is that people will see all that I am, and then will run away. And it's like, this group saw a little bit of my darkness. They embraced that darkness, that animalisticness in them, and they all embraced him and welcomed him, and he broke down. And, you know, it's like, yeah, it might be silly, like, this whole thing is nuts, but at the end of the day, it was good. You know, it's like, that camaraderie, like, feeling like, having a place to feel like you belong, feel like, actually, he's like, is this what it's like to have friends? Because a lot of the stuff he was sharing with Marion, like, a lot of that is what he was like, oh, this is what friendships are about, like, kind of almost like his obsessive, like, how he gets about people, in particular women. Like, he was almost treating that as, like, that's interchangeable with how you're supposed to be with friends. Obviously, once again, it's just like, but he recognizes it's bad behavior. Like, nope, I got to be best for Henry. I got to be good. Can't, you know, we literally just dealt with the Natalie situation. We narrowly escaped that, so I've got to be good. Good. On the flip side of things, Theo is spending more time around Love. But it is the thing of, you know, wanting him to find someone his own age, because it's like, I am a married woman. It's like, but she feels that connection. And just like I said, it is a byproduct of, like, a lot of her, like, dynamic with Theo is kind of, like, based around her brother. We'll get to that later. But ultimately, like, Theo, you know, he says, like, oh, he's taking time off of school because of the whole Natalie thing. But when Love kind of shuts him down again, he, like, obviously gets arrested. And it's like, you could have hurt someone. You could have hurt yourself or someone. It's like, it was a scooter, and electric shoes. And even Love is like, wait, they arrested you for being drunk on a scooter? It's like, yeah. So that's pretty wild. and they're riding on together, and they fall, and they're having fun. But then Theo opens up about, like, it's not Natalie the reason why he's failing. It's because he can't stop thinking about love, and it's just because he felt that connection with her. Like, you can understand me. He's never felt this way. And even she's like, I'm a married woman. Like, what is your end game? They proceed to make out and have sex. She gets back. Her mom pretty much knows what's going on. And it was interesting because she's like, for her, it's like, I'm supposed to be happy. I am happy here. The only reason why this is coming up is because Joe is, she's like, go ahead and blame Joe. But the reason why you love Joe so much was because he was a problem you could fix. That dynamic is something, that's a relationship you have with a lot of people. In particular, that was a relationship you have with your brother. And she's like, so I'm going to be blunt with you. Grow up. Like, essentially, that was interesting because it's like, right, you're only like interested in people like that's why you're taking such an interest in Theo, because he's someone that's screwed up and he's someone that you can fix. So that's what it comes with. So it kind of leans a little bit into what I had brought up before, and as I was saying just earlier, but I kept drawing parallels between Love and 40 and Love and Theo. Like, there was a parallel, like she straight up having sex with Theo, but still. And so it's like a thing of like, yes, I know you love your son, but that doesn't mean you still won't do stuff, I guess, like that it's impossible for you to harm him or whatever. So it kind of puts things in perspective for Love, and she's telling Theo, like, hey, find someone your own age, never again. So Joe comes back from his trip and it's good. And I love that line where Joe is like, I thought was so interesting, where he's like, before he was like, right, you were right about our, that this party was bigger than just like Henry. Like, we took care of him. Like, we did this together. Like, we're going to be okay. Like, we're in this together. We got this figured out. And obviously, he's kind of back doing his thing in the sheets. But then, obviously, you have Love seeing Theo with someone else. And it's like, she's just watching and it's like, oh yeah, that's going to turn complicated. She has her thing going on. And then Joe has decided to not completely bury his instincts, because by burying his instincts, that's when he loses control. He loses it, like, he has his rage and everything. Because I love that line where he was going up the stairs and he's like, it's been so long. I don't remember what it was like before wanting someone to accept all of me, like life before that, like before, like feeling like he'll never have someone, like that emptiness of feeling like no one will ever do that, fully accept him. Like, he doesn't remember life before that, but it's like every time you do find that, it comes with a cost. And so Fiona in the past is like, right, I saw that you were going to push that bully, and it's like, right, you if you had did it, I wouldn't have said anything because he would have deserved it. He was like, yeah, but I chickened out. And she's like, you did. But that's because you're not the same as him. So she's like, I know what it's like to be bullied, so we'll look after each other. Deal? And I'm like, because like I said, whatever it is with Fiona is the core to whatever, like, is at the heart of Joe, why Joe is the way he is. It's his mom. It's a lot of stuff that accumulated, but I think Fiona might be like the crux of why Joe is the way he is. So, not trying to justify it, but it's purely just trying to understand how he ended up the way he did. So, obviously there's a lot of contributing factors, but I feel like Fiona might be like the linchpin to it all, essentially. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see. Like, I've been interested to see where that story develops, because I've been feeling that for a while, since we slowly gotten more and more of this Fiona story as it's spread out. But Joe deciding no longer to hold all that stuff back, because if he does, that's when it comes bursting out. So let it out, creak out a little bit, but change things up. Like, don't do your usual thing of, keeping like trophies and stuff like that. No. Don't keep anything. Don't stalk online. Just watch, And so kind of changing and adjusting, because it's like, well, I mean, collecting stuff has screwed him over a lot. That's how Beck ended up finding out about everything. I don't remember that happened with Love. It happened with Natalie stuff, and that's what sent Love over the edge. So it's like, right, no more collecting. Like, this will be my little secret. I'll keep it from you. I have to keep it from you, Love. It's like balancing both of this. You and Marion is going to be confusing, but I can do it. I just got to be careful. So careful. So he's got his own thing going on. Love's got her own thing going on. I think eventually both of their issues are going to collide, and they're going to find out about each other's secret. He's going to find out about Theo. She's going to find out about Marianne. Because for him, even he's trying to figure out, like, why do I find you? Like, why am I taking such an interest in you? What is it about you that I've kind of latched onto so much, It's definitely going to be interesting to see where all this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till next time we meet, be happy, be safe, light to the force, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.